Okay, so I am rolling. But I want you to tell me, so this is the house I grew up until I was about 12, 13. And I want you to tell the story of how you guys got the money to buy this house. If this is the first house that you bought.
Well, we were living in upstairs of a house. They had split this house into 2 apartments, and we lived upstairs. And the guy downstairs from us worked for the city of Akron. Well, they moved out, and other people bought the house, and this rock band guy became our new downstairs neighbor. But the Andersons, who were our downstairs neighbor, they moved about a block away. And so it's been about 8 or 9 months, and we ran into him, and Bill Anderson said, well, don't move out. Even if they raise your rent, don't move out. And we're like, well, what are you talking about? He goes, well, the city's going to give you money. They're putting a park in here. He worked for the city, so he knew some of this stuff. He said, they're going to give you money. If you're here, you're going to get relocation benefits. They're going to tear this house down and put a park here. So whatever you do, don't move. So they raised our rent like $5 or $10 a month, but we stayed there. And lo and behold, the city's like, well, okay, you can get relocation benefits even if you're renting, because we're taking this house down. So there was a matching fund deal. So they're like, well, we're going to give you $1,000 or something like that. But if you could come up with another $1,600, we'll match that. So we're like, well, we could have, about $3,000 if we could come up with $1,600. And so we didn't have much money, but I borrowed money from my dad, about $1,000, I believe, and we came up with the down payment, and we bought this house. And it was under $17,000 at the time, and we got like $2,600 from the city for relocation benefits. So that's the only way we were able to afford a house.
When was that, about 1975-ish?
Yeah, I'm thinking that
Pat was born. Pat was born in 75.
It was a year before Pat was born, and
Okay.
we moved in 73, right around Thanksgiving, I believe, 73.
Okay, so about a year and a half before my brother
Yeah.
was born. What do you remember about raising kids on this street here?
Well, just about every house had kids in it. And across the street over here, there was the Mazzaros up the street, and Millers, and Jason Vorse, and the Richards, and the Rhodeses. There were just a lot of kids in the neighborhood, and pretty much the same age, so they played together a lot. And we didn't have to watch it too much because we knew all their parents. And so if you were at Crystal's house or Scott's house, we knew you guys were okay because we knew their parents, and they were okay if their kids played at our house. So it was pretty good.
I remember it the same way, and I remember coming over here to the Richards' house or the Martin's house, and Mom would send me over for, milk or eggs or something on a Sunday. She'd say, oh, we're 2 eggs short. Can you go over to Paul Marini's and get a couple eggs? And everyone was real friendly and helpful. And Helen and Larry would sit on the porch and watch us skateboard. And then next door here we had the Martins' grandparents, and those kids were about our age. And then the Richards across the street, and Artie would set us up with obstacle courses, and we'd play wiffle ball in the street. And we had Crystal and Nicole, the Miller girls, just on and on. You could see at the bottom end of the street there's a park.
But Larry and Helen were especially nice to us. They would, Helen would bring me out a beer if she'd see me out mowing the lawn or something. She'd say, hey, come over here, and she'd have a cold beer for me or whatever. And they were always very, very nice to us. And so were the Carvers.
And up that way next to Helen and Larry, you had Jason and George Vorse, and then You had on the other side Eric the Armet lived up there, and
Yeah,
Drew
Eric the
Saloon
Armet.
lived up there, and
Drew Saloon was up there.
Sherry Wyant was on the corner.
Sabos lived up
And
way
they-
up
and
at
she-
the corner.
You know, babysat us sometimes. We'd hang out in her apple tree and play
Yeah.
cards and listen to Pink Floyd and all that good stuff. And the Mazzaris kids, of course, there were 3 of them, and Andrea Ward, when we were kids, lived there. Miller's grandparents lived there. And then later, Glockner, my friend, moved into the Blue House. Kelly Johnson.
Yeah, and before
Dory
Kelly
and all
Johnson
that,
lived
right?
there, one of my students lived there, Dory Major.
Dory Major, and then
It was, John, her husband's name was John, and
Royston.
Royston, and they had
They lived in that house right
they
there.
had a daughter that was Eileen's
Yeah,
age,
Monica,
Monica,
and the 2 little pug dogs.
and Dory was one of my
Yeah.
former students. She was in my first algebra class at St. Vincent St. Mary. And John worked in good. I think he worked in the kitchen. I would run into him every once in a while. So
Yeah.
this neighborhood was a lot of blue collar families. The Yerkes lived down on the corner, and John worked at Goodyear. We rode carpooled to Goodyear for several
Right.
years.
He'd pull up and honk the horn, and out you went.
Yep, and
And
he
that way-
drove most of the time,
That way, Mom could have the car during the day.
and he'd get his favors because I would help his kids with math. They'd come up to the house sometimes, and I would help them. They didn't need much help, but Dawn was a
Yeah.
bright girl. She became a school
I
teacher.
remember she would babysit for us
And
sometimes.
Johnny and Kevin, they were smart kids, but when they need a little help with math, they just come up to the house and we'd work it out.
Yeah, it's a good neighborhood. We used to play street. You were talking about street football in your old neighborhood, and this is where we used to play right here. We would go telephone pole to telephone pole, you know. And if you got in the middle, it was that was first down, and you know, cars or not, that's what we did. And we'd kick the can and hide and seek and all that good
I
stuff.
remember the sledding ramp we had
Oh,
one
yeah.
year.
Right off the front porch.
Snow was so deep it went all the way up to the front porch. So we ended up making a ramp that went all the way down to the street.
All
I
the
think
way
early.
down, yeah, all the way down. Yeah, that was great.
And it went really fast.
And later, the Lovitts moved in that house. The blue house was my good buddy Johnny. So I actually spent some of my high school time here after we moved, and I love it.
And that's the
And,
Ponderosa over there.
Yeah, and that's the park, Heinz Hillcrest, where we played a lot of basketball. So, well, I appreciate you coming back here. This is more my hood than yours, but you certainly spent a lot of time. And I have to thank you because our lawn was like that was the lawn we got to play in. And these other kids' dads, they said, get off the lawn. And we put fertilizer, and they didn't want us playing in the yard, but you just didn't care. So you go out on a run on a Saturday, and then, you know, we did okay. The yard's still there, but it's the only original driveway on the street, and it's the only house without a garage. So, you know, when you bought the house, I'm sure it was the cheaper house in the neighborhood, and you know, maybe it still is, but it's held together pretty well.
I remember one winter, it was really, really cold, and I parked the car in the top of that driveway, and I came home and the car was out in the street. It just, somehow it slid all the way down the driveway and into the street, and that was a little scary.
Yeah. You were still running when we were here. What was your, where would you go to run? You would go from here down to Firestone Metro?
I would take Beardsley and then go up to Glen Mountain and run all the way out to the golf course, Firestone Metro. Yep, come back. When I get real ambitious, I do a 10-miler. I go out to towards Coventry and run out there. Come around and come back. Manchester Road or whatever it was.